All right, in this video, we're going to go through kind of a quick demo for ACI. I'm just adding some VLANs to our switches. So we need to check the VLAN pool first. So one of the first things I want to do is get into my GUI, right? So, okay, looks good. And I want to go to that Fabric tab under Pools, and I want to look at my physical pool. In my case, mine's called static. Here, I can take a look and say, oh, does it have my VLANs? My VLAN I'm going to add 2020 and 2021, it's in that range. If it's not in that range, I need to go in and I need to add it in. Okay? So first thing, make sure that that VLAN pool exists. Number two, we're going to check port group policy. Okay? Want to make sure that the policy that we want exists. So I'm going to go, in this case, I'm still in my access policies. I see an interface, I see my leaf interfaces, right? And I can see some of my different policy groups. All right? Now we're doing VPC, our virtual port channel. So I'm going to look under here and I see I have a policy called my UCS chassis. All right. And this is already configured. Now, if I didn't like it, right, then I could go ahead and create my own policy. So I clone that one. And so and if I wanted to make any changes to it, all right, where I could say, okay, hey, I could go ahead and maybe instead of being 10 gigs, maybe it's at a different speed and I could create a 40 gig policy. But that's the second thing. I want to make sure that we have that interface policy group. Once we have those two things, we're ready to go on the next step, which is to configure the interface. For that, so we're going to click on Configure an Interface VPC. I'm going to look over here and see, do I already have a switch policy? So if I see there's 101, 102, instead of creating a new one, I'm going to just double click on that, right, and modify the existing one. I just want to add some interfaces to it. So these aren't new switches, so I don't need to create a new profile. But I do need to add some interfaces. So I'm going to add some interfaces, right? I click on the little plus, specify that this is VPC. I specify which interfaces, and maybe I'll do 43. Right? And it's going to go ahead. I'm going to choose my profile group. So I'm going to select choose one. From the drop down, I'm going to select my new UCS3. So that's pretty cool. So I'm going to save that. All right. I'll click save a second time. It should be good to go. All right. And so we went ahead and we should be able to see over here, right, that, hey, there's the interface, right? 1/43, looking good. All right. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And so now we've configured the interface. Let's go over to the tenant. And first we're going to do it via the GUI. So in this case, I have an application profile, right? And I see under my application profile, I have some EPGs. I take a look at one of these EPGs, right? And I can see that they've been configured with static ports, right? For those two switches, right? And we're going to play with interface 43. So we're going to add in our new one. So we have a couple options on this. One option, right, is to come in here and say, okay, great. I see these, it's already configured. Right, and I can add in my static ports. So I can say, okay, great, I want to add in my static ports. In this case, VPC. Right. From the list, I see my UCS3, right, that I just created. Okay. So that looks pretty good. Now it says, okay, great. What's my port encapsulation? Right. And so for my port encapsulation, I'm going to go ahead and specify that this is 2023. And I'll set it up as immediate. Okay. Looking good. I go ahead and click next, okay, and click finish. Okay. And so I went ahead and I add that in. So now you can see, hey, we've added in that VPC, that UCS3, all right, that we just created. Now you're probably thinking about, well, what interfaces is this on? Well, the cool thing about doing it this particular way, as opposed to doing it on the individual interfaces like they did, this will work. You can do the individual interfaces. But if we reference that port group, right, this is why it's cool, is later on,